Hi, everyone. Welcome back to the Good Doctor's continuing coverage of The Handmaid's Tale. As ever, we are the Good Doctors, Hinson and Donnelly, respectively, forever and always. And today we are talking about episode 8, Unfit, which, full disclosure, at time of recording, Dr. Donnelly literally just watched. I watched it yesterday, so I've had a little bit of space. But we still find ourselves
live from my in-laws' house. So.
Yeah, live and direct from Kristen's in-laws' house. We've still got some leftover anger and some continuing anger and frustration and confusion as to what our dear beloved heroine is up to these days in Gilead. So let's crack on with what ended up being a really interesting episode in the middle. The beginning and the end of the episodes, controversial.
Different feelings about the beginning and the end.
Yeah, Dr. Donnelly has a lot of thoughts about Aunt Lydia, so I'm going to do the recap here. So we start out with all the handmaids are at an unknown commander's house. I think they say the name in the episode, but I didn't.
Andy.
Yeah, so whoever Andy is, whatever
his
last name is. I think they say the wife's name at some point, but like last name. So of Andy is in labor. All the handmaids are there. Chilling. June is just like chilling out because she doesn't apparently have to do anything anymore. She's standing back, and we start to see that there's been a collective turn in the handmaids against of Matthew for turning in the Martha at the end of the last episode.
It's like the plastics have all turned against Caddy. It was
straight up Mean Girls.
Yeah.
13-year-old Erin that was like bullied by her friends really, didn't appreciate June turning into a teenager. Again, as we said at the end of last episode, we both see a lot of June's own culpability and accountability for what eventually happened to Frances, who was Hannah's Martha.
Yep.
But our June doesn't, apparently. No. It's just 100% of Matthew.
And somehow neither do a lot of the other handmaids. It seems to be just Janine and of Matthew that understand that June isn't like the second coming of Christ.
Yeah. So I'm just going to start calling June the Godfather because that's how she's behaving. Or the Godmother, I guess. Although Godmothers are usually nice. So I'm going to stay with Godfather.
It's a very Corleone vibe.
It is a very Corleone vibe. Lots of sneaky facial expressions and looks that she's giving other handmaids, and they're then being dicks of Matthew. And June thinks that she is untouchable because she needs to be possibly on TV for another plea for Nicole. So she uses that as leverage against Aunt Lydia. Aunt Lydia is like, cool, I don't have to cattle prod you, but I can put you in a shame circle, which is what she does. She takes all the handmaids back to the Red Center, sits them in a circle, and has them all chant shame at June for her culpability in what happened to the Martha. And I think we get a glimpse in the fantastic face acting of Elizabeth Moss that deep down inside, June does understand.
There's a piece of that humanity that's still there.
Yeah, and I think a lot of times what people do when they feel really guilty, right, is they project on other people.
Yeah.
And so I think she's projecting a lot of her anger. She wants somebody to blame. She doesn't want to blame herself. So she's blaming totally of Matthew. And we get to see a little bit of that in the shame circle. And then what her guilt prompts her to then do is tattletale on of Matthew again. And so she says of Matthew doesn't want her baby. And like I said that in a whiny little child voice because that's what I feel like she did. Aunt Lydia, Aunt of Matthew doesn't want her baby. That's what I feel like she should have sounded like.
It was so petulant. It was so
childish. And I have a lot of empathy for of Matthew. At the beginning I didn't. I thought she was just like being a dick. But we had some wonderful subscribers and followers that kind of pulled me back off that ledge and said, you know what, we don't know what's going on with her. She's trying to survive this just like everybody else. And her mechanism of survival is acceptance and belief. We don't know if she actually believes in Gilead or if she is just believing in Gilead to survive. We don't know anything of Matthew. So I felt really bad for her in that scene. She's clearly struggling with the idea of being pregnant again.
Yeah.
And June,
and that it could be a girl, and oh my God, that broke my heart.
Yeah, when she said, "This feels different, I'm scared of what her life would be." Me too,
Yeah.
Matthew. And like the fact that is what is motivating June to get Nicole out, to get Hannah out, right? Because she is so scared of what their life would be in Gilead. And she gave none of that compassion of Matthew. I find that really disturbing. I don't know where June is mentally, but I have a lot more concerns about it, because I think the June they had introduced us to before and had shown us over the last couple of seasons had a great deal of compassion in her.
And what's really interesting to me too is like, so we know I think back to the catatonic episodes of last season, and how she kind of came out of that. And I mean, trauma rewires your brain. We know this. And there's lots of different ways then that can happen, and it rewrites your personality. But the only way, like, this doesn't feel like, this feels feral somehow. Mm-hmm. And that's certainly a response to trauma, but it feels like a weirdly proportioned one considering everything else we've already seen her go through.
Yeah.
Like, this just feels like a narrative instead of a story they're trying to tell. And that's like, it's like a red herring, and I don't understand what's happening.
Yeah, and I don't, like we said in the last episode, we're not really sure what the main story of June is anymore. And it's increasingly looking like they're leaning towards the trauma of being enslaved in this system and being separated from her children is breaking her down into like elemental, fundamental parts of her nature. We'll get back to that towards the end of the episode.
Yeah. It doesn't explain why she's the Godfather.
I still don't understand why every other handmaid is just like, oh yeah, let's do exactly what June wants us to do. Which is be really, really mean to all of these other women who are also enslaved.
Yeah.
But we get an Aunt Lydia flashback. That's the bulk of this episode. I'm just going to go through that quickly, like the main points, and then Dr. Donnelly will break it down. So we see that Aunt Lydia was a teacher in the before. She really cares for the kid. She's helping to support this young kid whose mom is like late picking him up. And so, we flash forward back to Gilead. June goes back to the house, has a conversation with Lawrence about Mrs. Lawrence, and he says, you're good for her. It's good for her to have you. And June like snaps back at him. You realize this world that you've built is destroying her. You're not protecting her, you're killing her by keeping her here. So he snaps back, tells her he has no idea where Hannah is, and he doesn't know anybody that can find her. And sends her to her room, which, fine.
Okay.
And then we get a vision of the aunts placing the handmaids, which was fascinating.
Yeah, I liked that process a bit.
Yeah, because we like process. So we get to see that happening. We learn that apparently commanders can say whether or not they want a handmaid of color, because one of the they're trying to place a handmaid and they're like, oh, what about so-and-so? And oh no, they don't want a handmaid of color. We are becoming increasingly more uncomfortable with how race is not at all dealt with in this show, which is in a way dealing with it. So stay tuned. We're going to have a special edition coming up soon with a very special guest talking about race and representation in The Handmaid's Tale. So we see that it's happening. We see that it's problematic. We're not going to talk about it in this video because we're going to talk about it in depth coming up soon. So that was interesting. And then we flash back again to Aunt Lydia, and that's where we spend most of the episode. Aunt Lydia becomes friendly with this woman and her son. There's this really weird forced makeover scenario. Aunt Lydia goes out on a date with the lovely principal from this school, and everything goes fabulous, and they're drinking champagne and eating fruit and chocolate and listening to only words. No other words, only words?
Only words.
Only words. We looked it up. It's by Extreme, because everyone remembers that band name from 1990.
Yep.
They go back to the house. They start messing about, in common parlance, and Aunt Lydia ends up getting rejected in a very lovely and empathetic way by the cute man, and she like snaps, breaks the window, breaks her mirror in her bathroom, and then kind of reverts back into herself. Her hair is pulled up in the next scene we see her, and she's very anxious, and she is triggering the removal of this young boy from the mother's care. And we get to see some interesting things about the new laws that are coming into Gilead, and the guy that's there.
At that point, America, yeah.
Yeah, or at that point, America. And because Aunt Lydia kind of replies to the principal, we're required by law to report moral weakness. So we're starting to see the laws are changing.
Yeah.
And, the same for Aunt Lydia always goes, the ends justify the means for her forever and always. We're back to her at her little aunt's table talking about what to do with June. She recognizes that the Waterfords was a toxic environment, and she hints that the Lawrences is another toxic environment. And so the end of the episode is in Loaves and Fishes. And it's I'm still not over kind of what happened in this scene. Aunt Lydia talks to June and says, I'm going to get you out of the Lawrences. They are dangerously unorthodox, which is quite a sin in Gilead's terms. And Aunt Lydia says Eleanor is ill, so she knows that Mrs. Lawrence is not well. June, you can see, is like starting to panic. She's like, oh, what if I have to go into another commander's house and actually have to go through another ceremony? If I was June, I would panic as well. But we also get this internal monologue from June about acquiring a taste for the pain of others.
Yeah.
Where she says, she compares it to a peaty whiskey, which I don't feel like those two things are equivalent. I mean, I don't like a peated whiskey, and I could probably learn to like it if I drank it enough, but I don't think that's the same as enjoying other people in pain.
Especially not if I'm inflicting the pain.
Yep. So
not my kink, so not sure.
So we're in Loaves and Fishes, and we get this weird sequence where Lydia is telling June, I'm going to move you out of the Lawrence's house. And in the corner of her eye, June sees of Matthew start to crack, like emotionally. She starts to break down. She looks really upset and agitated. She's holding a can of like tinned lobster. I don't know. And Janine, God bless our wonderful, kind and compassionate Janine, goes to check on her and gets a tin of lobster to the face, as if that girl hasn't suffered enough. Of Matthew starts to beat Janine, and she knocks Janine down. A guardian comes for her. She smashes some glass into his neck, apparently killing him, because they show us like the glass sticking out of his neck. And she picks up the guardian's gun, and she's like, it was a fascinating shot, kind of like the tunnel vision through the wings of the handmaid's vision. And she's like panicking, looking around. She's not going to shoot a handmaid. She's not going to shoot a Martha. She turns back and she sees June standing there, Godfather June, who looks over at Lydia, nods.
Like almost imperceptibly.
As if this was like her plan. She's, over there, take out Aunt Lydia. Of Matthew turns to shoot Lydia, pulls back the cock on the trigger, and gets shot by guardian, dragged out. End of scene, with June looking really quite scary, and then the beautiful Doris Day singing Que Sera Sera.
Sure. Whatever will be, will be.
Whatever will be, will be. Yeah, so we see that happening. I've looked at the preview for next week. So of Matthew, I can tell you, spoiler alert, you'll see the preview anyway, is not dead, but apparently in a coma. And obviously they're trying to keep her alive because of the baby. So she doesn't die, but she's knocked unconscious. We do learn her name, which is Natalie, because that's what Lydia calls her. It made me very sad that we didn't get of Matthew. They didn't let of Matthew say her own name, but like I said, we'll come back to race and the Handmaid's Tale at another time. Yeah, and that was what happened. And it was really upsetting. And I'm really upset with June. And welcome to the Handmaid's Tale season 3.
Yeah, like I'm just exhausted by this. Like as we were watching, as in one of her things, maybe when we were like staring at her lying upside down on the bed or whatever, I was just like, how much longer do I have with this? Like, how much longer are we living in this part of this narrative?
And
it's not going anywhere. That makes, I don't know.
I still don't feel like we went anywhere.
No, somebody said it, I think it might've been Emily Vanderwerf at Vox, said like they are furious ducks, like paddling water, telling us that they're going somewhere when they're actually going nowhere.
I want to know why we spent so much time learning about the resistance in the first 3 episodes of this season to not talk about it at all in the last 3 episodes at all. Because to me, that's interesting. If their show is about how slavery and trauma breaks human beings, that's not necessarily a show I want to sit through for another few more seasons. Because I think a lot of the reason, like, we all want to see this system get knocked down, right? That might not be realistic. Realistically, it's really, really hard to overthrow a political system. But we don't watch TV for reality, right?
No, this is fiction, y'all. Like,
so I'm watching this to watch Gilead burn. That is what I want to see happen.
Yeah.
What they're showing me from June is, if that happens, it's a long way away, unless they think her descent into this kind of feral state is going to turn her into more of a rebel. And she does say, I finally know what Offglen felt, what made her put that, bomb vest on. So maybe that's what they're showing us, but they're still only showing me a June that cares only about June.
Yeah, and I just want to point out that all of our questions of like, okay, so what was the plan here? Like, how is this going to help you get Hannah? It didn't. It put Hannah farther away.
Yeah, and my question, like, what does of Matthew shooting Aunt Lydia get anyone? A, in terms of June getting Hannah, or B, helping the resistance?
Nothing. The answer is nothing.
It does not change your situation at all, except maybe make June feel better because somebody else is in pain.
Yeah. Yeah.
And maybe that's all she's capable of seeing right now.
And again, like, if she was one of my clients, this would be a different conversation, but she's a television character and I like dramaturgical arcs.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. So
lots of questions.
Somebody with a dramaturgical arc, though, is Aunt Lydia.
Aunt Lydia, let's talk about Aunt Lydia. What did you make of this fascinating insight into our dear beloved Aunt Aud?
First of all, she's always been herself, which I really appreciate that the kind of like quasi gleeful maternal that she gets when she's taking care of her girls is authentic to herself and is not something Gilead put there.
I wrote down at one point, these are the handmaids are her children. Like,
100%.
They are the children that she was helping when she was a family lawyer. They are the children that she was helping when she was a teacher. Helping, I should say now, because we all know she's actually perpetuating enslavement, but in her mind, helping.
Yeah, in her mind. I'm a huge believer in a big part of talking about people you don't agree with is to talk about their motivations. I'm not somebody who discounts people's motivations. I know there's a lot of folks who say motivations don't matter. that's just not how I process the planet. So motivations are very important to me. And I think that's one of the reasons that I was really grateful for this, because it really made Aunt Lydia make sense to me.
Yeah, we say this all the time. We did when we were doing our PhDs in Northern Ireland, because it's a really, really big part of understanding Northern Ireland. Like, understanding is not condoning, right? You can
100%. Yep.
understand somebody's motivations, and that doesn't mean you're condoning their actions.
No. So certainly I don't condone Aunt Lydia's actions. She totally makes sense to me.
Yeah.
So like, I found it really interesting that like Noelle, who is I recognize that actress from something, by the way, and it's driving me nuts. I need to pull up.
I'm going to look it up on IMDb right now while you're talking.
Okay. Cause I know her from something.
Yeah.
So while she's talking about like, trying to push Aunt Lydia's life, a couple things, like one, Aunt Lydia said she was married and it didn't work out. The other thing is that she makes a real face when the girl says girlfriend, both of which tells me that she was probably raised really conservative, is going to be my guess.
Yeah.
And it's possible that the marriage was really early and like they were children in a way, like not actual children, but like emotional children.
Yeah.
I find it interesting that she was she's always been pro children. Wouldn't surprise me if Lydia herself had infertility issues.
She's on Orange is the New Black, by the way.
No, that's not where I know her from, because I pieced out of that one a couple years ago. But okay.
She was on early, I think.
Oh, was she?
Yeah. I'm looking us up. I don't think anything else that you watch.
Okay. I just know her face.
That's the major thing on her IMDb.
Okay.
Other than that, it's all one episodes of things.
Anyway, so like, it's possible that she had infertility issues. It's possible that she was really, really, really wanted kids and he didn't. Mm-hmm. Like, there are a lot of like little, signals that she's always been somebody who thinks that children are the most important part of any adult's life.
Yeah.
Not just the parents' life, but adults' lives is pro-child.
Yeah.
Which tells us a lot about her. Mm-hmm. That adults are dispensable in terms of preparing the child, which is a real bizarre.
Yeah, and that it's acceptable to have formalized mechanisms for removing children.
And because of proven abuse.
Yeah.
The moral failings, and who defines those moral failings but Aunt Lydia. Because the thing is that I noticed too is that her sense of righteousness is the only one that matters. Mm-hmm. So like, I mean, I don't think this woman was doing a bang up job with her kiddo, but he also seemed like fine.
Yeah.
And like, he was fed and watered and like had shelter and seemed to know that he was loved. And like, if he ate McDonald's too many times, like, God, who among us have not? Like, the kid will be fine.
Yeah.
The girl seems super shallow, pretty vapid, not necessarily somebody I could hang out with, and not probably mentally turn her into some sort of client. But I hated the forced makeover.
Oh, yeah, it was so awkward. It was so cringe.
And like, as somebody who doesn't wear makeup a lot and who frequently looks like this, I think that they're being kind and like gifting me with a makeover. And I've always done it. And like, but it always felt like I was becoming who they wanted me to be. Like they perceived it as this like unveiling of my true self. Like, no, my true self is a messy bun and no makeup. Like, that's my true self.
Yeah, it was like the antithesis of Queer Eye. Like, Queer Eye is always about meeting the people where they are and just trying to help them feel a little bit more confident. And that's what I love about it, is because even in this last season, they had women and they didn't like overly make up them. They just showed them a couple of things. And she was like, let me give you an entire makeup palette. And I was like, but what if that's not her? She's a grown woman. Like, yeah.
And like, you have to get back out there. I want you to be with somebody. Being single doesn't mean you're unhappy.
Yeah.
Like, Lydia was living a pretty fulfilled life.
And who are you to judge that, like, that's going to make her complete, you know?
Oh my gosh. Yeah. That being said, the date was adorable.
It was so cute. I was so happy for them on the date. And then I was like it's like watching a train is going to crash, right?
It's going to crash, yeah. I was so into the karaoke, I was nearly grinning.
I know, me too. It was so nice.
So they get back to the house, and she starts giving him a hand job, and he has to say no because his wife's only been dead for 3 years, and they've only gone out on one date, and this is all too soon.
Yeah.
So that's the most beautiful way to handle. He didn't shame her. He didn't do anything. But she has internalized that there are only two kinds of women, and those are virgins and whores.
Yeah.
So if she's not a virgin, if she's not perfect, then she's a whore. And in order to, this is an internalized narrative that she's given herself. And she has to fit in one of those things. So the breaking of the mirror to me was symbolizing like getting rid of the makeup and the vanity and like everything that turned her into the whore.
And and she saw that as this is what happens when you give in to vanity and self kind of love and appreciation.
Yep.
Yeah. Yep. It turns out this way. So I wonder what happened in her past relationship or even in her upbringing, maybe her religious upbringing that gave her that kind of.
Very well could be her upbringing. Yeah, it could have been the marriage. I mean, it didn't work out in that tight tone of voice, could tell us that it was incredibly abusive, or it could tell us any number of things, or Ann Dowd could have just decided that it was abusive.
Yeah, we don't know.
We don't know, because Ann Dowd gets to make her own choices. But I found it utterly fascinating. And then, of course, when she like does the thing to take away the kid, she's not shamed by the woman because Noelle's a whore.
Yeah.
She's gone back to dividing the world into good and evil, and which is a really interesting because I really think they're setting us up with Lydia and June as the parallel women in this season. Now that like, what's her nuts, Serena is like so far out of the narrative for this arc.
Yeah.
So we're looking at how both Lydia and June handle Gilead because they're very, very similar. Mm-hmm. They're both fundamentally selfish. They're both in the way that they both believe that their own versions of righteousness are the only versions of righteousness. They both believe they're the smartest women in the room, or the goodest, or the most whatever, and they both snap. I mean, the way Aunt Lydia treated Janine my gosh.
Yeah, she really snapped at Janine and the the Putnam's party that they had for Angela.
Because like psychologically, the limited knowledge I have is that human beings actually can't live in black and white. Like our brains don't allow it.
Yeah.
We need nuance and ambiguity, and the more you force yourself back into black and white, the more you'll snap when something gets complicated.
Right.
And I
think it's a survival mechanism, seeing things in black and white a lot of times.
For sure.
And especially
that's
like
temporary.
I can see June getting pushed more into this black and white kind of area with every time she tries to see complexity.
Yeah.
And getting like knocked back down, particularly every time she tries to see complexity in Serena. And I think she feels really betrayed by what Serena did. Cause I think she thought,
should. Yeah.
And she should. But like the scene with the two of them, like in the Lincoln Memorial from a few episodes ago was brutal to watch. And it was like friends breaking up, but were they ever really friends? I don't know. But they had this really, really weird bond, right? And that bond was breaking. And so I think that's, as much as we all like hate Serena, and I hate Serena, we have to understand that like in a weird Stockholmy way, they formed this relationship. And I think that's done some damage to June too, that, that's pushing her into this black and white self-righteousness. Because every time she's tried to bring somebody else in, I think she feels betrayed by Nick, now that I'm thinking about it. And so every time she's tried to bring somebody into her world in Gilead and widen that, muddy that black and whiteness of the situation, she's been reminded that Gilead is horrible. Gilead is horrible. People betrayed me.
Yeah.
And then I'm sure that's how she sees what of Matthew did as well. And she's losing kind of perspective.
She's losing her grips on reality. Yeah.
She's losing perspective.
Yeah.
But maybe that's a reaction to what's happening to her this season.
Again, if that's the story they end up telling, then I'm going to say like, you know what? I'm really glad they knew where they were going.
Yeah. Yeah. It's not necessarily the story I want to see.
I just.
Yeah.
But, we've got, okay, so this was 8. So we have 9, 10, 11, 12, 13. We've got 5 hours left.
I'm really, really hoping we get back into the Resistance in episode 9. I would like to see the show moving forward.
Yeah, I'm okay if we don't go back to Canada for a little bit. I would like to catch up with Nick.
Yeah, I want to know, what is the crack with Nick? How's Chicago?
How's Chicago, Nicholas? I'd like to know if he's enjoying his pizza.
What's going on?
Maybe taking in some Upright Citizens Brigade, sketch shows.
I don't know but I think they're just turning the focus onto June now.
Yeah, I know. And she right now is the least interesting character to me.
The trailer for the next episode looks like it is June heavy.
All June all the time. Okay.
The sneak peek.
Okay.
But
I don't need to go back to the Waterfords, but at the same time, I want to go back to the Waterfords and the Capitol.
Oh, Serena shows up in the sneak peek.
Oh, good. Okay.
Week. But it's apparently in Gilead. So anybody who watched the sneak peek or don't, because I'm about to tell you right now what it says, because presumably you've watched this episode. So of Matthew is in some form of coma and in a hospital, and June is forced to stand watch or kneel technically until the baby is born. That's what Lydia forces her to do. So we get a vision, Serena comes in at one point, June tries to talk to her. Janine comes in and kind of puts June to task, which I'm really looking forward to that scene. And she actually calls her selfish. She looks at her and says, you've changed.
Yeah.
You only care about yourself now. So I love Janine for speaking truth to apparent power and telling June, you're not thinking of anybody but yourself right now. So we'll see. So I don't know that we're going to get Nick in that June heavy episode, but I would like to.
Yeah, I'd like to check in with Nick. And legitimately, I want to know if we're going to chase up the quasi gay panic with Christopher Maloney.
Why introduce it's becoming one of those things where it's why introduce it if you're not going to follow it up?
Yeah, gay panic's I said the wrong thing. He's not gay panic. Repressed homosexuality. There we go. That's what I was meant.
There we go. Yeah, so we've got 5 more hours. So hopefully they follow all of these rabbit trails that they've set up.
Or honestly, I'll take 2. If you can't give me all 5, I'll take 2. Just let one of them not be June.
Well, she's the star of the show.
She is, but give me they've spun out this very, very detailed world.
Yeah.
And I don't know. I know. I mean, Bruce Miller doesn't seem to be interested in the same story that I'm interested in. Fine. But again, if this whole show doesn't end with Gilead burning to the ground, what have we been doing?
Yeah. Because, especially with just the state of the world as it is right now, as we're watching the show, I think the majority of people that are watching The Handmaid's Tale are watching it because they want to see that good defeats evil.
And legitimately, that's what every story in human existence wants.
Yeah.
With the exception of all the books that win the Man Booker Prize, which seem to wallow in misery.
Because even the Hunger Games, they did it.
Yeah.
Won. They beat the Capitol. You can have a dystopia. I love a good dystopia.
Love a good dystopia.
But we always want to see that vision of the world.
Love has to win, man.
Burn. Come on, Harry Potter. Love always wins.
Love always wins. And that's, the 3 number 1 grossing movies at the box office of all time are all about how love always wins.
Exactly.
That's what we want.
That's what people want to see. So that's what I want to see.
I want to see love win, and I want to know what's happening with eyebrows.
Yeah, and SVU. And Christopher.
Yeah, and SVU. Yeah, and I really love Janine to stick around.
I know. I'm glad she's become the Jiminy Cricket. If she's going to be the Jiminy Cricket, that's just
I'm here for it.
Wait a second.
I'm here for it. Give that girl a guest star Emmy nomination, because I think she doesn't qualify for supporting because she's not been in enough episodes.
She's not in enough. Yeah. Yeah.
So, but we'll see. We'll see.
June's lost a bit of a moral compass here, so she needs somebody to course correct.
And always let your conscience be your guide.
And on that wonderful Disney note, I think we've covered everything we wanted to for Unfit.
Pretty much.
Really, really interesting.
Yep.
I was happy with the Lydia background story. I think we've all been waiting for that for a while. So that I appreciated that.
Yeah, I had given up hope that it was going to come. So
yeah, the beginning and end bits of the episode I'm a little skeptical about. Poor of Matthew. We will see what becomes of her.
So glad she's alive, though. I was real worried.
Natalie, I'm going to call her Natalie because that's her real name. I felt bad like writing of Matthew in all my notes. I was like, won't you just tell me her real name because I don't want to write this down. She's a human being. But for now, the human beings that are Dr. Hinson and Dr. Donnelly bid you a good day. And, hopefully you're not drowning in rain as we are in Pittsburgh or...
and anyone who's watching this who's anywhere near the Gulf Coast, our thoughts and prayers are with New Orleans.
Yeah, hopefully everyone is safe and can get safe with this weather that's coming.
Like, and he's on Twitter way, like legitimately we're lighting candles. So, yeah.
Yes, yeah. Everybody be safe and take care. And we will see you all for episode 9.